He is doing well, the independent candidate for Independent Ireland. And that last seat then is going to be a battle royale between the Labour Party. John Maher, the candidate from the city, looks like the one that most people are tipping will be in that shake-up there. But then you have the possibility of a second Sinn Féin candidate. Not seeing that coming through just yet there. And Mick Barry, the outgoing People Before Profit Solidarity TD, he's still hoping to hold on there. But we have a very long day ahead of us. 21 candidates in South Central, 20 candidates in North Central. We brought a sleeping bag.
Jonathan, thank you. We'll head now to Dunleary Rathdown and Simon Tierney.
Anton, how are you? Good morning from Ballantyre Community School. We've got about just 7% of boxes opened here, Anton. So the caveat, of course, is that it's too early to articulate any major trends. However, probably similar to some of the previous reporters that you've had on the show there, good showing from the government parties so far. Shea Brennan and Neil Richmond for Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael respectively, Anton, seem to be doing very well in the tallies that I've looked at and the official tallies that we've received from the guys on the floor there. Below that, to be expected, we've got a government minister in this constituency. Catherine Martin is also doing well and will benefit from a lot of the transfers from other left-leaning candidates in this constituency. Sinead Gibney is also doing well. Sinead Gibney is an interesting figure. The Soc Dems, she also ran in the European elections in June where she failed to get a seat but has been making inroads. And Sean Tracy for Sinn Féin is also doing well. Sinn Féin don't have any major history to speak of in this constituency, Anton. They've never had a seat here, but they did get the fourth in first preference votes in 2020, so there's clearly an emerging appetite for Sinn Féin here. I mean, I don't see any major disruption from Alan Shatter, the former Justice Minister, who is running again as an independent here in Rathdown. His numbers don't seem to be materialising, but as I say, it is early days. The challenge, Anton, for Fine Gael here is to try and retain seats. The outgoing TD from Fine Gael, Josepha Madigan, and also a former minister herself, is not running again. Maeve O'Connell is on the ticket with Neil Richmond.
That is Simon Tierney there in Dublin, Rathdown. Thank you very much, Simon. We're heading now to Louth and John Fardy, the existing sitting TDs there. 2 Sinn Féin, 1 Fine Gael, 1 Independent and 1 Labour. What has happened so far, John?
Yeah, so you may know, Anton, you know, the smallest county in Ireland actually has 24 people on the ballot. I think that's the largest number of people running. We only have a small number of boxes open so far, so there are a huge amount of caveats with this. And as you probably know, Louth is very much divided into 2 distinct areas. You have Drogheda, and that's very much seen in some ways almost as a commuting town to Dublin in lots of ways. And then Dundalk is the other epicentre, and you know, there's that old saying, and I think it may be even attributed to Ivan Yates, that Drogheda is the largest town in Ireland, but Dundalk is the largest town in Louth, and that just typifies how they are very distinct areas. But that not said, the way the early tallies are looking, we certainly have Sinn Féin with Rory O'Murchu doing very well. We probably have a second Sinn Féin TD coming in to taking over Imelda Munster, who's not running this time, although I have seen her tallying this morning, so it's all hands on deck. So it does look, and it's very early days, but Sinn Féin too. Callan, the independent from Drogheda, is doing reasonably well. Jed Nash, I know Ivan Yates had previously said he's a shoe-in. Early days look like he's doing okay. So that's 4 of the 5. The 5th one is going to be a real battle. Fine Gael have 2 candidates running here, and one of them, of course, has courted some controversy, John McGahan, for that incident that happened, and there was a whole issue around was he going to stand, and questions were asked of Simon Harris if he'd campaign with him and stuff like that. So it's too early to say. I don't even want to call how those votes are going, but it is certainly going to be a fight for that 4th, if not 5th final seat between Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. We haven't mentioned Fianna Fáil. They have 2 candidates, one of whom is based in Drogheda, Alison Cummin, described sometimes as a celebrity candidate, and it's early doors with her as well. Polling's okay so far, but it's hard to say for the 4th and particularly the 5th. But if you had to call it, you would say at this stage, it would look like Sinn Féin 2, Labour 1, and then the other two, it's really hard to say, but it's very, very early. And as everyone keeps saying to you, but I think it's really true and loud, a long day and weekend ahead of us with 24 candidates.
Well, we'll undoubtedly be talking to you a lot during it, John. Thank you very much. We're heading to Owen Sheehan now, who is in Galway West. How are things looking in Galway West, Owen?
Yeah, same caveat goes here that it is very, very early in the day. We had a voter turnout of 52% in the Galway West constituency. All ballot boxes are in the vicinity. They've literally just announced that the Inish Boffin boxes have just arrived. There clearly wasn't a ferry after 10 p.m. last night, but they've got them here now. So again, very early days, but the big takeaway here from the first few tally sheets that we've seen is that John Connolly appears to be outperforming Gráinne Shoiga. Remember, Eamon O'Queeve is retiring after 32 years as a Fianna Fáil TD here. Fianna Fáil potentially with a risky move to go with two candidates and to try and push two candidates. They came out neck and neck in the TG Cahir poll recently, and that may look like a plan that might backfire on them. It still might, however, if you were to pick one of them, again, from the very, very little information that we have so far, you might be putting your money on John Connolly. It's notable as well that that we've got a good Sinn Féin vote here as well in a couple of the sheets. Mairead Farrell looked like she was going to be at risk of losing her seat, but she might perform better than some people might think. And again, the Norton Kind Fine Gael, the duopoly of Fine Gael potentials here, it looks like they might split the vote significantly, which might cost Naughton, or at least give her a bit of a tense couple of hours this afternoon. So still very much all to play for. I think Grealish should be fine. I think Catherine Connolly should be fine in this constituency, but maybe the idea that Hildegard Naughton was absolutely safe as houses is somewhat challenged by these early tally sheets, but very, very, very early, Anton.
Owen, thank you. We'll briefly go to Wicklow, where John Duggan is in situ. And of course, one of the big questions here is how Stephen Donnelly is likely to get on. What's your insight thus far, John?
We have, Anton, 9% of boxes open, so we got a flavour but not a fully accurate tally so far. So it's pretty clear that Simon Harris, the Taoiseach, will be elected. 27% of the early vote here. John Brady of Sinn Féin, who topped the poll last time on 16%, and Jennifer Whitmore of the Social Democrats did a good exit poll last night. She's third on 13%. Not a favourable start for Stephen Matthews of the Green Party, one of the TDs here. Remember, 5 last time, 4 this time, so his early boxes have not been favourable to him. So it could be the case that it comes down to, if there's a Bertie Ahern effect, Edward Timmins of Fine Gael is the second candidate there. The former Fine Gaeler, an independent now from the Newtown Kennedy area, Shay Cullen, and Stephen Donnelly for the last seat here. It would be quite remarkable, Anton, if Fianna Fáil were returned to government without Stephen Donnelly, but as opposed to the glimmer of hope from last night and the exit poll was that Fine Gael transfers might be favourable to Fianna Fáil. We had 15 cans here last time. We've got 18 candidates. It's going to be a dogfight here in the Garden of Ireland. A lot to come.
Thank you, John, and thank you as well to Gabi Gadaviscatcha, political correspondent with the Irish Independent, Hugh O'Connell, political editor with the Sunday Times in Ireland, and Jack Horgan-Jones from the Irish Times. They're our panel this morning, and Ivan Yates, I should say my apologies, Ivan, for leaving you out of that list. I just assume you at this point. We'll be back after this break.
Welcome to the loud, cavernous hall that is Nemo Rangers here in Cork, and we are counting 2 constituencies here, Cork North Central and Cork South Central, and this is going to be a very busy spot over the course of the next few hours. So if you just look over here, what you'll see is we've got these black boxes have been brought in from all of the polling stations right around Cork City and County. When 9 o'clock comes, they're going to break the seals on those boxes and put them out onto the tables that are here, and from those tables you're going to see them being presented to the tally. So these are very important tally men at the moment. And what they're going to do is they're going to be able to work out whose first preference went where. It's a really accurate indication of how people have voted, and will probably tell us the first 3 or 4 seats with a good bit of certainty. After that, we're in the realm of the unknown. Where is the 5th seat going to go in each of the 2 constituencies? The reality is, nobody can tell you here today what it's going to look like until we get down and dirty and start counting later on. This is the exciting part of the count, when those boxes are opened. After that, we're in it for the long haul. And just to give you an indication, Cork North Central, which has been counted here, what that is going to produce is probably 1 Sinn Féin, 1 Fianna Fáil, 1 Fine Gael, 1 Independent Ireland TD, and somebody else. It could be the case that there will be 5 different political groupings in the one constituency, and the question is, how do you make a government out of that? Welcome to the loud, cavernous hall that is Nemo Rangers here in Cork. And we are counting 2 constituencies here, Cork North Central and Cork South Central. And this is going to be a very busy spot over the course of the next few hours. So if we just look over here, what you'll see is we've got these black boxes have been brought in from all of the polling stations right all around Cork City and County.
This is Highland Radio News.
Way. The ballot boxes have been opened at the Ora Leisure Centre. Early indications show Sinn Féin's Padraig McLaughlin is polling very well so far, with Pearse Doherty also securing a good amount of votes. Michaela Clark has more.
The people have had their say at the ballot box, and the counting of votes is now underway at the Ora Leisure Centre. However, it's likely to be late this afternoon before we have the results of the first count. It's expected that over 80,000 people voted in the county, with over 131,000 registered to vote. 20 candidates are vying for 5 Dáil seats. We'll bring you the latest on air and online at highlandradio.com.
Well, John McAteer from the Tyrconnell Tribune outlines what we can expect from today.
It depends on the size of the poll and what the turnout is. The tallying has just begun there behind us. That should continue perhaps carry out for around 1:30. At that point we should have a rough idea what the first preferences are going to be. At that point then we just await the first count, and it'll probably be 6, 7 o'clock in the evening before we get that first count. And it'll all happen very, very slowly.
Meanwhile, national exit poll shows the 3 largest parties are neck and neck in terms of vote share. Political correspondent Sean Defoe reports.
The exit poll suggests Sinn Féin has received 21.1% of the vote, with Fine Gael marginally behind on 21 and Fianna Fáil in third place among the larger parties at 19.5. The Soc Dems lead the smaller parties at 5.8%, Labour has 5 and the Green Party 4. Aontú is at 3.6, Solidarity People Before Profit at 3.1 and Independent Ireland at 2.2. Independents and others as a bloc get 14.6% of the vote. 35% of those polled wanted to see Micheál Martin as Taoiseach, with 34% opting for Mary Lou McDonald. Simon Harris trailed at 27%. The poll also showed housing as the biggest issue of the campaign at 28%, followed by cost of living at 19% and health at 17%.
Over 2,500 customers were left without power in Letterkenny this morning. The outage occurred at around 20 to 9 in the Gortley area, and it was expected to return at 9:45. ESB said that they were working to repair the fault, and they apologise for the lack of supply. The record homeless figures of almost 15,000 people is being described as unacceptable. DePaul says any new government must gather.
South Central, and this is going to be a very busy spot over the course of the next few hours. So if we just look over here, what you'll see is we've got
2024 here on News Talk throughout today and tomorrow. There will be extensive and extended coverage as boxes are opened, tallies counted, and results start to come in. With me here in studio, I have Sean Defoe, our political correspondent. We have Danny McConnell, editor at the Business Post, Hugh O'Connell, political editor for the Sunday Times in Ireland, and Ivan Yates. And of course, we have reporters in all of the count centres around the country. We got a sense of some of those count centres before we took the news. We'll add a couple more by going to the RDS, where Andrew Louth is with us for the latest on Dublin Bay North and South.
Good morning, Anton. Yeah, so we'll start with Dublin Bay South because we actually have a tally here. So out of 22% of the boxes open, and these boxes take in kind of south of the Liffey, so along the Docklands, and then you have a bit of Ringsend in there as well, and areas along Pearse Street. Barry Andrews of Sinn Féin is on 26.8% after these boxes. Sinn Féin will be very happy with that. He needed to very much hold his vote in these kind of areas, and he certainly is doing so, and Sinn Féin will be breathing a bit of a sigh of relief because Chris Andrews was expected to be kind of in the mix for the final seat for this one. Ivana Bacik is coming next on 16.4%, so Labour very much holding their own in this end of the constituency as well. After that, you've got Jim O'Callaghan 9.2%, and James Gagan of Fine Gael 8.7%, and Owen Hayes of Social Democrats 7.8%. 22% of the boxes, Anton, we still have to come into these areas such as Donnybrook, Ballsbridge, and then out towards Ranelagh, Rathmines, and into the outskirts of Rathgar as well. So very early days, and you would expect the likes of Fine Gael to pick up some votes there. In Dublin Bay North, we don't have a tally for Dublin Bay North just yet, but I have been looking at a couple of tally sheets, and one which was kind of pointed out to me as a bellwether, and this was a box in Clontarf, and certainly it seems to give an indication as to where 4 of the 5 seats could certainly go, and they are for Deirdre Heaney of Fianna Fáil is going well there, Nisha O'Murray of Fine Gael, remember this is Richard Bruton's seat, and then you have Cian O'Callaghan, the Social Democrats, holding his own here, and that last seat there seemed to be a bit of a scrap for. Barry Heenahan, if this box is anything to go by, is the independent, one of the underlings of the former minister Finian McGrath. He's certainly in the mix to take that final seat. In fact, he looks quite comfortable if you were to go by this box and this box alone, but look, it's only one box. As for Denise Mitchell, the poll topper in Dublin Bay North last time, she isn't really going well on this box, but if you look up towards a couple of boxes that I saw in Edenmore, she's flying, so she should certainly be well able to hold on to her seat there, Anton.
Ivan Yates is asking about Hazel Chew.
Hazel Chew at the moment is at 6.3%, and that's after 22% of the boxes that are tallied. And these wouldn't take in the areas around Pembroke where her base would be. Likewise, the 2 Fine Gael candidates, James Gagan and Emma Blaine. So there could be more votes to come for her yet, but certainly if you look at Ivana Bacik's total of 16.4% in the same area, it will be a tough ask for Hazel Chew. She will have a lot of work to do in that Pembroke area and out towards Rathmines and Rathgar as well.
Okay, as I said, we're joined by Sean Defoe, our political correspondent, and by Danny McConnell. I want to get their take in a second. Before that, we'll shoot over to Cavan Monaghan, where, of course, one of the big questions has been among the Fine Gael retirees, of whom there are so many, one of them being a significant big hitter. That's Heather Humphreys in this 5-seater. Shane Hannon is there. Shane Hannon, boxes open?
Yeah, morning, Anton. We've about 8% of boxes open here in Cavan Monaghan. So far, the share of the quota at the minute, Sinn Féin 34%. Remember, they were on 37% 4 years ago. Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil locked on 24%, and others and independents 18% so far. As you'd expect, I mean, I've been looking around at different boxes. A lot of them in South Monaghan, some in Cavan as well. Matt Carthy of Sinn Féin, who topped the poll here 4 years ago, again polling very, very well. He's on 20% of the vote with 8% of boxes opened. Carmel Brady of Fine Gael, with albeit early days and geographical bias coming into play here, she is on 12%. Which is a fairly decent showing for her. The thinking behind, I guess, Heather Humphreys' retirement was that David Maxwell in North Monaghan was the heir apparent to her seat, potentially. He is polling quite well. He's behind Carmel Brady at the moment on 10%, but still a long way to go in terms of Fine Gael and seeing whether they can hold on to that seat. Maybe bring in a second person as well. Fianna Fáil took the last 2 seats here last time out. Niamh Smith polled 8% in 2020. She's on 11% this time around, Anton, and I guess she was chair of that RTE Oireachtas committee, improved her profile a little bit as well. Robbie Gallagher polling on around 10%, and Sinn Féin, who got the second place seat here as well in 2020 through Pauline Tully, well, she's on 6%. She polled 14% last time out, so maybe not as well as she would have hoped early doors. Cathy Bennett, also of Sinn Féin, They've put 3 candidates forward, albeit it was 2 last time around. She is on 8%. So as I said, there's 20 candidates here for 5 seats. 4 years ago we had 2 Sinn Féin, 2 Fianna Fáil and 1 Fine Gael. Too early to tell, Anton, but so far so good, you would say, for Cormac Brady of Fianna Fáil, of Fine Gael I should say, and Sarah O'Reilly of Aintu as well on 10%.
Shane, thank you very much. Shane Hannon there in Cavan Monaghan. Ivan, hold that thought for 1 second. Sean Defoe, the Hazel Chew performance.
Not great at the moment. Not necessarily that surprising, given that there is a down day for the Greens and that Eamon Ryan, whose seat she is trying to keep, spent most of the campaign in Azerbaijan as opposed to in Dublin Based South, which definitely didn't help her case. What's interesting down there is, and we're seeing this in a couple of places across the country, albeit on very early data, is that she's being outpolled by the Social Democrats. Owen Hayes, who no one gave a huge amount of a chance, he's at 7.5% of the vote on early days and actually in that 5th spot. So you could wonder if some of those left-wing votes wrap up together, might he actually be in the frame for a 4th seat, but still hard to see. And she's polling behind the second Fine Gael candidate, Emma Blaine, as well. We're seeing that with a couple of Social Democrats early on. If you look as well at Fingal East, Joan Hopkins, who wasn't given much of a chance because she had a huge local vote, but most of her vote came in Howth, which is in a different constituency. She's actually polling quite well early on and is sort of challenging the Sinn Féin candidate up there, but it's a 3-seater. It'd be a big ask for them to take a seat.
I should say, by the way, if you're listening to us on FM or if you're streaming on the website, you can also watch us because we're live streaming on all social channels. So if you want to watch a group of people furiously interrogate laptops, you can do so on social media. Ivan, you had a couple of points.
I was just making the point about Cavan Monaghan there, because within Fianna Fáil campaign, so they have Robbie is standing in Monaghan, and he would just canvass in that area. Ballyjames Duff, Virginia, would be Niamh Smith, and Cavan Town would be Brendan Smith. So when they say they vote in 7% of the boxes and so is doing well and all, it is totally geography related. And I always say, when I go to Fairyhouse races and the bumper is on and these horses have never run, or Willie's or Gordon Elliott's is fancied, there's one thing worse than no information, and that's the wrong information. So sometimes they're saying a candidate is getting 6%, but it's not in their area. So a real health warning on all of these things. But I do think that Hazel Chew thing is significant. Now, her council area is more the Pembroke side, but she was seen as one of the best chances of that's Eamon Ryan's seat. So the first difficulty they had was Eamon Ryan would have preferred if Claire Byrne was the candidate, and the Greens internally are split into pro and anti-government, and Hazel would have been seen to be anti-government. So I think the late surge has saved Chris Andrews there, and I think Jim O'Callaghan is safe, and the first 2 seats will be Batchick and Gagan.
They're also having trouble, it looks like, in Dunleary on early tallies as well, where that 4th seat is probably going to be a battle between Oisin Smith and Cormac Devlin. And Devlin is considerably ahead.
Very early numbers in Dublin West, which Roderick O'Gorman looks to be struggling. I mean, look, as Ivan said, massive health warning on all these things at this stage, but the early tallies there are showing that Jack Chambers pulled on.
Now, when we're looking at early tallies, I want to get your view on Dublin Central as well, because you had interesting information in respect to that. Before that, Danny, you are fresh into us. Your thoughts and view thus far of what you're seeing. Again, usual rules apply. Very early.
Okay. From the exit poll last night, the 2 surprising numbers were the Fianna Fáil number where it was, and the independent number I thought were lower than what we expected. I'm writing on Fianna Fáil for tomorrow. I spent a lot of the party yesterday canvassing over 20 people, party handlers, TD, senators and all the rest of it. They were cock-a-hoop. They were walking around saying, you can forget about parity of esteem with Fine Gael. We have it hosed. We're going to be 10 seats clear, all this sort of stuff. And a lot of bitching around the Fine Gael attacks on them early in the campaign. Very surprised that Fine Gael put their attack guns on them rather than concentrating on Sinn Féin and the independents.
Now, can I just stress test that? Because there was a sense that the commentary was that Fianna Fáil was going to have a whale of a time in this election and that Fine Gael were on their uppers. And there was then a sort of a counter-argument that said, that is the political bubble, that's the hacks talking to each other, that's not actually what either the data is showing but the party view. What you're saying is that was the internal Fianna Fáil view.
Yeah, and even what came back from rural constituencies like Galway East, from Cork South West, and from other places I was talking to people, after Kanturk, there was a notable sort of improvement of the mood towards Fianna Fáil. They kind of said, we're kind of getting a bit sick of Simon Harris and a bit sick of Fine Gael, and they like Micheál. They kind of figured that his personal appeal kind of transcended the party's appeal. And they noticed a shift on the doors in the last few days. That hasn't materialised. I mean, based on these numbers, and we're again exit numbers, Fianna Fáil this morning are stressing, polls and exit polls always understate their ultimate performance, so we'll wait and see. I think,
it has to be said, Jack Horgan-Jones was very strong in pointing out that the last time that the Ipsos MRBI exit poll was done, the one party that it got absolutely correct was Fianna Fáil.
Yeah. The one thing I will say is, in a lot of these constituencies and smaller constituencies, it's not necessarily a race between Fianna Fáil and Sinn Féin for either the last seat or the second seat. It's a race between Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil. And if they can stay ahead of Fine Gael, they could get a bit of a bonus, a seat bonus, because there'll be the Fine Gael who will transfer to them. So that's where it's going to get really interesting.
What Fine Gael are picking up is a really positive sign for them on some of the figures. They have estimated figures based on polls from Munster, and it has Fianna Fáil at 25% and Fine Gael at 22%. And Fianna Fáil were thinking they'd be much further clear of Fine Gael.
Yeah.
Now, when we were going through all of the constituency tallies, it was interesting to watch Ivan's reaction to various different. So I want to get that reaction verbalised in a second. Before that, Hugh, Dublin Central, you have some insight there from a good source.
Yeah, well, look, I'm looking at the tally sheet as well that's updating as we speak, and at the moment it has Mary Lou McDonald well ahead, 18%. Pascal Donoghue nearly 14%. Gary Gannon is going very well as well. He's also on 14%. Jerry Hutch on 12%. Jerry Hutch is running in fourth at the moment. 16% of the ballots tallied, I should say, with 38%, I should say, of the boxes open. Now, I have someone out there who's following the count very closely in another campaign, who's from another campaign, I should say, and they reckon that Hutch is very much in the mix here, that he would need strong transfers from Malachi Steenson, who's running at about 6%, to push him over the top.
NASA Hurricane?
NASA Hurricane is on just under 6%, so she's struggling.
She's going to lose.
Yeah, but look, there's and as Danny has made the point, there's areas like Cabra that haven't really been tallied yet. East Wall as well. So there's a long way to go there. But I mean, Jerry Hutch is doing very well. He's, when I was
and again, you'd assume he'd do well in East Wall.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was talking to people before this campaign, they reckoned 1,000 or 2,000 votes Jerry Hutch was going to get, first preference votes. He's already on these tallies 1,362 first preference votes.
But it's at that end of the constituency.
Yeah.
And you've got to take in where I'm from, the kind of Glasnevin, Drumcondra area, the Fitzroy area, where he would be expected to get a much lower vote.
Absolutely.
If he gets a respectable vote in those areas, then he is in the hunt. I just don't see him getting enough to stay ahead of Clare.
It'd be a remarkable commentary about the attitude in those areas if it did occur, though.
But it's a very diverse constituency.
Yeah.
I mean,
And the thing we always thought about Jerry Hutch going into this campaign was transfer friendliness wasn't going to be there for him. I mean, really, he was relying perhaps on the likes of Malachi Steenson in terms of transfers, but you wouldn't necessarily see other candidates transferring very heavily towards him. So look,
where's Marie Sherlock in those?
Marie Sherlock is 7%.
Okay. And where's Claire Daly?
Claire Daly is 4.6%.
I like the way Hugh has become the oracle. We just bombard him with questions.
I'm just looking at a spreadsheet, guys. I'll send it to you if you want.
Ivan has been simmering for the past while. You reacted to a number of those names as they got called out during the...
Well, first of all, people derided when I said the Greens could get no seat, Armageddon for them. That is very much in play, no seat. Like you have your Brian Leddens, that you could write off the seat in Limerick City ages ago. NASA Hurricane. Hazel Chew for me is a real bellwether, and I'd be looking at a number of bellwethers.
Can you explain that a bit more, Ivan? Because it is only an hour and a quarter ago since we were looking at the Greens coming back on 3 or a bit. Why are you now more pessimistic than you were?
Just put it like this: the Greens' best chances of a seat are Oisin Smith, definitely Roderick O'Connor and Catherine Martin. After that, like Stephen Matthews, I don't think has any chance. Like Wicklow's gone from 5 to 4 seats, and I think that seat's just gone there. There was one particular Green that you read out there which wasn't doing well. What was that one?
Oh, name them all. But I have one actually that is doing well. I've just gotten some figures in from Rathdown. So you've got 0.25% of the boxes open there, and Catherine Martin's at 9.5%. She's right in the hunt. Fianna Fáil, Shay Brennan 14.4. Neil Richmond, as expected, looks like he'll top the poll 21.
Maeve O'Connell
8.3. So she's behind Catherine Martin.
There's an issue for Fine Gael where they've managed the vote. They could have enough votes for 2 seats, but if Neil Richmond gets too many, Maeve O'Connell won't get the second seat.
The 2 surprises there early on are Sinead Gibney doing better than expected. She's ahead of Catherine Martin at the moment on 10%, and then your pony Michael Fleming 5.6 so far.
Right,
Not
but
so well.
Step Aside is his area.
Yeah, well, I mean, Neil is doing quite well here. I don't know whether Step Aside is taken into this box, but Step Aside will be Neil Richmond as well, obviously.
Mr. Chateau? Where is he?
Shatter 4.2. Actually, the nearly more interesting one out of this is Sinn Féin's Sean Tracy, former head of the press office, is at 9.1%. He's right in the hunt there with Catherine Martin, as in an area where Sinn Féin have no history, no
And
base
he had
at
a
all.
very bad locals there. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's quite a result, and does indicate somewhat of a trend towards Sinn Féin in this election that didn't
Just
exist
to
in the
take
locals.
Galway West. So if you pick up any
Well,
five seats,
do me a favour, hold off on Galway West for a second, because we're going to go to Owen McHugh and Dublin West, the former Taoiseach's constituency, of course, 5-seater. Owen, what do we know so far?
Well, Antoine, with 35% of the boxes opened, we're looking at a turnout of around 51%. It's as predicted for the first 3 seats in this 5-seater. Paul Donnelly on 22% at the moment, Jack Chambers just after that on 20%, and then down the field to Emer Curry of Fine Gael on 13%. Where it gets interesting then is for seats 4 and 5. Ruth Coppinger is looking, she's looking good at the moment at 9%, and then after her, the Green Party leader Roderick O'Gorman is tied with Ellen Murphy from the Soc Dems on around 6%. So it's all to play for. Earlier, Aintu were doing well when 12% of the boxes were open. That obviously has changed now, and Ellen Troy has gone back to field a little bit. She's tied with John Walsh from Labour and Tanya Doyle, the Independent, on around 5%. So as predicted for the first 3 seats, with Paul Donnelly looking like he's going to top the poll at the moment. Obviously only 35% of the boxes opened, but it's certainly going to be interesting for the Green Party leader and those involved looking for the last 2 seats here in Dublin West.
Owen McHugh, thank you very much. Roderick O'Gorman in the last general, Sean, according to the work that you did, 11.2% first preference votes, now 6% again. Early doors.
Obviously early doors, yeah, and I didn't hear whether that takes in Castleknock, which is where he'd traditionally be strong so far, but look, he's absolutely going to be in a fight for that final seat. I'm not sure, is it going to be John Walsh as you were predicting, Ivan, but he's going to be in a scrap. Tanya Doyle was doing pretty well, the Independent, there on the last boxes that I saw. So
Ruth Coppinger has done well so far.
She should take a seat.
You were saying on a bad day for Sinn Féin would be a good day for Ruth Coppinger because they'd be competing for the same vote. But it looks like Ruth Coppinger is going to return to the door.
We'll be back after this break.
Election 2024 on News Talk.
Just a few weeks ago or a few months ago, the fact that one of them wasn't a sitting public representative and the other one was brand new to politics, I think it was a big stretch for the two of them, you know.
Okay, stay right where you are, both of you. Just to run through some of the percentages for you in Inishowen so far, and more boxes are going to be opened in different parts of the county as this morning wears on. Nicky Bradley has 3.9% of the vote there. Vincent Bradley 0.1%. Nuala Carr 0.5% of the Greens. Pearse Doherty 15.4% of the vote in Inishowen. Let's see, Pat the Cope Gallagher, I beg your pardon, Noel Jordan 0.6%. And on it goes. Well, I'll cut across that for a moment because we're trying to get a sense too of what the people behind some of these campaigns are feeling. So Donald Kavanagh has a guest with him, I suppose, to reflect on the 11.6% of the vote in Inishowen that 100% redress is returning at this time.
Thanks, Greg. Yes, joined by Ali Farron, who is 100% redress councillor and de facto leader of the party. Ali, I remember speaking to you this time last year when the possibility of a party was being discussed. Now, if I had said to you then that you'd have 4 councillors and be in the running for a Dáil seat, would you have believed that?
I would have took it. The reason we were formed in the first place was to get a voice, and we're very, very lucky that we got a voice in the council elections. And we are now that one step further, and we're looking for another voice.
In terms of Charles Ward's performance in this election, the percentage he's running on at the moment, according to the tallies, is about just under 12%. Now, I'm sure you would have wanted more, particularly coming out of boxes in Inishowen, which, as you more than anyone know, is the epicentre of this whole crisis.
Of course, we always want more, but we have to be happy with what we've got so far. We're in the top 4 and 5 on the sheets that I was tallying there a while ago. So. Look, we're still in. We're not out of the race. We're still in the race. I would just like to see a lot more. We always thought we were more transfer friendly, and I don't see that coming at the moment. So that's a wee worry. and the big machines are, you know, the ones that has the money to put the posters up and to put the big advertising campaigns together. They might come through as we move through the day.
So that, I have to say, in fairness, I saw as many Charles Ward posters as I saw for anybody else. Greg, you wanted to come in there?
No, I was going to say, like,
They were all recycled, by the way.
Yeah, I was going to say though, you know, the biggest advertising posters surely all around Inishowen is every second
Defective house, yeah. Well, yeah, it is, yeah. But then, you know, like Sinn Féin landed with the poster that said 100% redress and a free car. So, like from our point of view, like there was a lot of people bought into that. You can see that on the tallies.
Election 2024 here
look,
on
it's an uphill struggle. Like for a young party, small party, people probably had more faith on putting two of the same two boys back down the road. But you know, we needed our own voice, and
we have a record number of seats up for grabs. We have a record number of candidates going for those seats, and that means that there's going to be an awful lot of counting to be done. We'll obviously have analysis in studio. With us, we have Craig Hughes, who is political editor of the Irish Daily Mail, and as well as that, Denny McConnell, the editor of the Business Post, our own Sean Defoe, political correspondent, and Hugh O'Connell, political editor of the Sunday Times in Ireland. And where we're going to head now is over to Wicklow Wexford, and we have Alex Rowley. Alex, what do you have to report?
Well, good morning, Anton from Kylenair Community Centre outside Gorey. At the moment, what I can tell you is that Brian Brennan from Fine Gael is leading it here so far with our first tally just coming in. So he's got 23.08%. That is then followed by Fionn O'Sullivan, the councillor sitting in Gorey for Sinn Féin. He is 22.83%. And then Malcolm Byrne, former TD, of course, who was elected in 2019 in Wexford and then subsequently lost his seat in 2020. He is on 21.52% of the vote. So if this is the result to go off, it looks like one seat for each of the main three parties. A quick one then of what we have afterwards. Pat Kennedy, Fianna Fáil councillor for the Arklow area and a Rathdrum native, 11.67%, and Pierre Leonard, then independent councillor in Arklow as well, 11.53%. So far we have about 15 boxes open and quite a high turnout for the Wicklow Wexford constituency. We're looking at an estimate at 65% turnout here.
Thank you very much, Alex, and we'll be back to you during the day. Of course, that's Alex Rowley there, Wicklow Wexford. Craig Hughes, who has just joined as political editor of the Daily Mail and Mail on Sunday. You're just fresh from the RDS.
Yeah, I was out there looking at the first boxes being opened in Dublin Central. One thing that struck me particularly was, first of all, as you've spoken about, is the number of votes, first of all, for Gerard Hutch, but crucially, the transfers coming from Malachy Steenson at Gerard Hutch seemed to be close to 100% from what I was seeing. So every first preference vote for Malachy Steenson was going to Gerard Hutch. So I think if that trend comes true, even to be about 60%, you'll see him being really up there in the shake-up.
Which was the point that you were making earlier, Hugh, that's what will be so central, is what he gets in terms of transfers.
Yeah, and look, I mean, on the evidence of what Craig is saying here, like there seems to be some sort of strategy that has emerged, whether organic or otherwise, that Steenson voters are transferring to Gerry Hutch.
And between them at the moment, they have nearly 20% of the vote of tallies so far. Like they're well in the shake for a seat.
I mean, I said earlier that the expectations from people in other campaigns in Dublin Central coming into this election was Hutch probably get 1,000 to 2,000 first preference votes. He's on 1,973, and there's less than a quarter of votes tallied.
Yeah, and Stenson there up at 980 at the moment on my tally here. So I mean, they're strong numbers coming out of Dublin Central.
And then Clare Daly on the flip side, very poor, only 4% at the moment.
They're the two interesting ones to look at, is Clare Daly's vote and Mary Fitzpatrick. Mary Fitzpatrick, again, who has tried to get elected so many times in that constituency, really struggling at a time when you think the Fianna Fáil, the move towards Fianna Fáil would be better.
Yeah,
that's
and Mary Fitzpatrick, this was some thought this would be the election she'd finally do it. Bertie Ahern out canvassing with her this time, famously, of course, that split in 2007. But it just doesn't seem to have happened for her.
But she's also kind of become almost a byword for futility in getting elected. And there are a number of other Sinn Féin
Unfortunately,
candidates,
so,
or Fianna Fáil candidates in Dublin, when you look at, you know, Shea Brennan, when you look at Lorraine Clifford Lee, who are falling into that category. If they don't do it this time, will they ever do it?
Let's head to Dublin Bay North. Cian O'Callaghan, Deputy Leader of the Social Democrats and Dublin Bay North TD, is with us. In an unusual move, before I ask you about early tallies, Cian, I should ask you about your party leader. How is she getting on with the new baby?
Oh, great, and we're all delighted with the news. Fantastic news for Holly and partner Barry yesterday. So it was terrific news and certainly very interesting timing.
Yeah, it has to be. I think it is. It is most definitely the first time that a party leader has given birth during an election day. It is superb timing. Congratulations to her. Putting her to one side, what are you seeing in Dublin Bay North?
Listen, I haven't actually been in the town centre, so I haven't seen the tallies there for Dublin Bay North, so I can't give you an up-to-date picture on it. I can give you some insight into tallies I've been looking at around the country for the Social Democrats, and we're certainly performing very well. Thread campaign said that we want to go into government. We outlined the policy positions that we want to make an impact on in government. We outlined deal breakers in areas of housing, healthcare, childcare, disability services, climate action. So I think we were very clear throughout the course of the campaign that we do want to go into government to make a difference, and these are the areas that we specifically want to prioritise. And I think we've been clear as well that we just can't afford to go in the same direction that the current government has been going in. You know, housing, if you take housing for example, we had record numbers of homeless people yesterday.
Indeed. Well, Cian, forgive me for cutting across you. I'm just conscious that we don't want to reventilate the issues too much when we're going through it. The 5.8% that you were on the Irish Times Ipsos MRBI exit poll from late last night, do you believe that is likely to be the end result when it all shakes out?
Certainly in terms of the tallies we've seen so far, and look, it is only 20-25% of boxes opened, but it does seem to be shown that the exit poll seems to be, in terms of our 5.8%, largely accurate. If we achieve 5.8%, that would be our highest ever vote. It would be a doubling of the vote for the last general election, and would put us into the position of being the fourth largest party in Ireland. So that'd be moving from sixth place to fourth, so that'd be a very good result for us.
Wouldn't it just? Cian, thank you very much. This is Cian O'Callaghan, who is Deputy Leader of the Social Democrats TD for Dublin Bay North. We're going to head to Wexford and Aidan Delaney.
Good morning, Anton. Unfortunately, numbers very low on the ground here at the minute. We opened boxes at 9 o'clock. We reckon there's about 80 boxes open so far, but a decision has been made not to put out partial tallies. So we are expecting a first official tally at 12:30 this afternoon. Early indications are that most of the boxes opened are from the north of the constituency, the new north, given that the head was cut off it basically. We are looking at the areas around Enniscorthy, Kilmuckridge, Blackwater, Bree, Davidstown, these kind of areas, and naturally enough the sitting TDs James Brown, Johnny Mythen and Carl Byrne, who is looking to replace Paul Keogh. They are all scoring well in their home territory so far. The person who's probably happiest most is probably Verona Murphy, another sitting TD. She is scoring quite well in the north of the county so far, given that her base would be around the Ramsgrange kind of South County area. She'll be happy with what she's polling there so far, knowing that a lot of the glut of her votes are expected to come later on. But around half of the boxes open here, and still very early days.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. That's Aidan Delaney, and we'll be checking back in with Aidan a bit later on. Hugh, can we go back to the sort of the trends that we're seeing emerging? Because before this election, obviously the polls had shifted significantly. We had seen at one point 18 months ago, the mood music was all Sinn Féin is going to be the commanding leader of whatever is the next government. But more recently, the sense was that this was going to be the election of independence, that we were going to have a huge rump of independence, and that it was going to be a big challenge in government formation, and also that it would be the defining characteristics of the election. So far, we're a mile from that.
Yeah, well, we're not as close as, or we're not as close to what the polls were indicating in the run up to this campaign, and certainly when you look at there was sort of 20% Fine Gael, 20% Fianna Fáil, 20% Sinn Féin, and then 20% or more for independents. But in the exit poll, the combined support level for independents, Independent Ireland, and others is running at 16.8%. So. That tracks with the last Ipsos MRBI poll before the election. It's a little below what the very last opinion poll of the election, the Red Sea poll in the Business Post, I think had independents at 19.
The combined Independent Ireland's independent vote was
at 19. So it's
do we count Independent Ireland within the independents?
Some do, some don't.
So Ipsos broke it out, and it's Independent Ireland came in at 2.2. So actual support for independence is 12.7, and then others is 1.9. So combined 16.8. So it's not quite the surge towards independence that one might have expected. Now look, in the shakeout, when all the votes are counted, you'll see some independents elected probably into the last seats across the country. Some independents will do very well. I'm thinking of Michael Fitzmaurice, for example, probably going to top the poll in Roscommon and Galway. But and obviously the Healy-Raes, Michael Healy-Rae probably top the poll there. Danny Healy-Rae will get in on his surplus. But in general, it doesn't seem like we will definitely, because we have more seats in the next door, we will probably have more independents. But and they could feature in the shake-up if Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael are getting close to that magic 88 number, and maybe just get a few independents on board to get them over the top. But it's not the Independence Day, perhaps, that some had forecasted in advance of this election.
The fragmented nature of it at the moment has been, I guess, observed quite ominously by Charlie Flanagan, outgoing TD for Laois. He said, it looks so unstable that he predicts we'll be going back to the polls in a matter of months.
That's
so good news for everyone.
Now, we've obviously talked a lot about early tallies in various different constituencies around the country. What we haven't done is look at which of those are bellwethers for national trends. And maybe what we might do is after the break have a look at some of those bellwether constituencies, and Sean Defoe might give us a sense of what it is that we should be looking for. We'll be back after this break.
Election 2024 on News Talk.
All you need.
For his two colleagues, he just ran.
People were at work. They could see that effectively Pat the Cope Gallagher could be deemed as home hosed and dried, so why head out and vote for the man? So they stuck the videos out, got out into the doors very soon after your dastardly poll was released.
I didn't meet anybody that was happy with the poll, and that's what polls are all about. That poll was completed just 1 week before the election campaign ended, and we can stand over that because we go out and we just meet the people face to face across the whole county.
All right, some more of your comments. Why was 100% backing Sinn Féin and not their own candidate? A bit of a contradiction, or is it tactical to put local Fianna Fáil out? Good morning, Greg. Looking forward to listening to your coverage of the general election today with the knowledgeable John McAteer and Paddy Rooney. Always a great listen. Another, what about the independents? How they're getting on? Sick listening about the big parties. Need them all out. Let the independents in. Come on, Kim McMenamin, take the seat, lad. Well, we've referenced them, and unfortunately it's very hard to sort of, at this point, back and forth too much on someone who's got 0.3% of the vote. In Kim McMenamin's case, it is 2.3%. Greg and your team, I think Charlie McConnell got some unfair treatment in relation to defective concrete. There are lots of houses being done and a good few completed, and they are state-of-the-art houses finished to the highest spec. So I really think the MICA scheme is working, but it's going to take time. Losing Charlie McConnell in Inishowen will be a big loss. Hi Greg, Donegal girl living in Galway. We'll be keeping a close eye on the Facebook Live today. Looking forward to seeing how the results play out. Thanks for the coverage. It's our pleasure. Good morning, Greg from Luton. Luton, England. Michael Byrne and Tess watching the Great Election Show on YouTube. Sinn Féin polling well early doors. Stay with us, Michael and Tess. It's great to have you on board over in Luton. Great coverage and great analysis from Greg and the team so far this morning. It's insane that Charlie McConaughey's polling ahead of Charles Ward in Inishowen 2-1. Hopefully that turns around as the day goes on, because 100% redress need a TD in the Dáil. Mike McConaughey from London, ex-Fanad, enjoying Greg and the team on YouTube. My entertainment sorted for the day. Is that tally 2024 spreadsheet accessible too? If there's a link, let me try and dig that out for you, by the way, because I don't want to, if it is accessible, I'll try and see if I can share it out. Why do you keep talking about the big parties? Fianna Fáil, Sinn Féin, Fine Gael. I've been watching now for 30 minutes and it's the same old. What about the others that are running and how they can help and turn things around? Well, the die is cast, my friend. People went out and voted, and they voted 45% really of an endorsement in the government that's been in power for the last 5 years. 45% of those that decided to vote voted in favour of the government that was in situ. And I've been saying on the 9 till noon show for years that there was this presumption that the government might change. And people should not presume that, because they always have solid support. And as I say, I don't want to be disrespectful to any of the candidates on the lower percentages, but at this point, their names might come into the conversation as further boxes are open, but we're in Inishowen. Those are the boxes that are being open. All right, stay right where you are. Thank you so very much for all of your comments. Keep them coming into us. We'll be back with more from the team in about 5 minutes. Stay right where you are.
Sheridan Security now introducing zero-wire smart alarm systems. Zero wire, zero mess, and a real peace of mind. With a simple press of a button, your alarm can be set or unset, or download the free app and control it from your phone. Call us today on 074 912 6025 and get your alarm from €299. Stay local, stay safe, and protect what you value most with Sheridan Security Systems.
Have yourself a merry little National Trust Christmas. Let the Yuletide Market at Rowan Garden enthrall you. Meander through the festive winter trail at Mount Stewart. Unleash your sparkle at the new Twilight Market at the Argery. Step into a gorgeous Georgian Christmas at Castle Ward. Let little ones write letters to Santa at Castle Cool.
Claire
And
Caron
embrace the
on Sinn Féin
giant
and Michael
spirit of
Fitzmaurice
Christmas
of
at the
Independent
Giants
Ireland.
Causeway.
So far, Michael Fitzmaurice has been tallying around 25.3%. Claire Caron on 23%. Then it gets a bit more interesting when it gets down to the further seats. Martin Daly, who is a candidate for Fianna Fáil, is on 14.1%. And on these 15% of boxes, Aisling Dolan, a Fine Gael candidate, she is on 15.8%. And interestingly, she has a running mate, which Martin Daly does not. And her running mate is currently tallying around 5%. Eugene Murphy also is running in the constituency. He wasn't in Fianna Fáil. He was a senator and a TD in the past, and he is currently tallying around 9.4%, so it'll be interesting to see whether he could benefit the Fianna Fáil candidate Martin Daly. And so far there is some boxes open as well, I've noticed, in Boyle, which is new to the constituency, with some strong tallying there from Michael Fitzmaurice and Claire Caron, as everywhere else in the constituency. But Fine Gael's Dimpton Daly Finn, who is the running mate of Aisling Dolan, is doing well there. She's local to that side of the county.
Ben, thank you very much. Craig Hughes, of course, has political, or rather has personal skin in the game, being geographically located in that area originally. We'll come to you for your take on some of that in a second, Craig. First, Barry White is in Fingal.
Hi, Anton. Good morning. Welcome to the National Show Centre here in Fingal. Two constituencies here, Fingal East and Fingal West. We'll start off with Fingal East. They're going through the count pretty quickly here. 60% of boxes tallied. Of course, Fingal East is the home of the Housing Minister, Darragh O'Brien, who's doing very well indeed. He's currently on 23.7%, so he looks like he's going to retain his seat. Duncan Smith, Labour Party, sitting on 15.2%, and then it's neck and neck for that third seat according to 60% of the tallies so far. Fine Gael's Alan Farrell on 14.3%, and Sinn Féin's Anne Graves also on 14.3%. Then you have Joan Hopkins of the Social Democrats on 10.4%. Dean Mulligan, Independents for Change, sitting on 5.8%. So the tallies we have so far, Darragh O'Brien does look safe, but for the other two seats it's tight at the minute. Going to Dublin Fingal West, well, Louise O'Reilly from Sinn Féin is well ahead at the minute. She's on 23.9%. Then you've Robert O'Donoghue from Labour, the Labour councillor who did well in the local elections recently. He's doing very well indeed, 18.4%. And then for the third...
Oh, we seem to have lost Barry there. But we'll drop back in with Barry White in a second. Interesting, that number on Darragh O'Brien. He's polling in early tallies well ahead of his first preference vote from 2020, which is ironic given that housing was seen as one of the most significant issues of this election. But again, this is only a very small proportion of the boxes open. Sean Defoe, bellwether constituencies. What are the constituencies we should be looking for into which to infer national trends?
Well, there's quite a few. Actually, just to stay on Fingal East there for a second, it's surprising to see Sinn Féin doing so well there, and sort of reflects the national trend of them doing better than expected. They're outpolling Fine Gael for that third seat when we thought Alan Farrell was comfortable. Now a lot of boxes in Kinseely, which is where he would be strong, haven't yet been put into the pot, and most of Swords is done at this stage. And the surprise there is Dean Mulligan of Independence for Change, so that the Clare Daly surrogate not doing so well in that one. Some of the other constituencies that I've been watching, Meath West, it's a fascinating one. It's a 3-seater. We always thought Patrick Tobin was going to top the poll. That looks as though it will be still the case. Johnny Girk then of Sinn Féin doing very well with 34% of boxes open. He's got 25%, so you would expect their boxes in the west of the constituency. He lost a big swathe of it geographically, so to see him doing well, that's probably 2 seats. And then you sort of had 3 into 2, where you had the outgoing Fine Gael TD Damien English had retired. His PA Linda Murray Nelson was looking to take the seat. She's doing quite well on 17%. Aisling Dempsey of Fianna Fáil, Noel Dempsey's daughter, who has 11 uncles with the Dempsey name who've been out canvassing for her throughout the campaign. She's doing quite well at 16%. And you had Noel French, former Fine Gael candidate in Trim, who got 4,000 votes in the local elections. At the moment, French is the third of those, and it looks as a straight battle between Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil. So if you're looking for a national picture as to where the parties are going to be respective to each other, keep an eye on Meath West throughout the day. Another one to watch is, or turning into one to watch actually somewhat surprisingly, is the Offaly constituency, because we thought Offaly was going to be pretty cut and dry throughout this campaign, and actually it looks as though there's going to be a little bit more of a battle there than we thought between Tony McCormick of Fianna Fáil and Aoife Masterson of Fine Gael, or Sinn Féin rather, for that third seat. Sinn Féin were kind of written off here. They look like they could be in the run. And the third one I'm watching that we don't have a huge pile of data for at the moment is the Wexford constituency. It's a reduced 4-seater. You think Verona Murphy is going to take a seat, and then you have when you're looking at the 3 biggest parties being so close in the national poll, they all have a candidate in Enniscorthy, in James Brown, in Johnny Mythen, the 2 outgoing TDs, and then Cathal Byrne hoping to take the seat of Paul Keogh there for Fine Gael. They all have difficulties in that the redraw cut through Enniscorthy and took votes away from them. James Brown estimated he lost anywhere between 2,000 and 3,000 first preference votes to the redraw. So watch who comes out of that, because you've got 3 very similar national polls, all placed geographically, and that may show the wider trend, if you like, for us.
Sean, thank you. Hugh, you wanted to come in with some info there, I think, did you?
Yeah, just you mentioned Darragh O'Brien there out in Fingal East, but in Fingal West, what I was interested to see is Robert O'Donoghue, the Labour candidate there, is going pretty well, just behind, he's on 17% on the tallies so far, just a few percentage points behind Louise O'Reilly, but in second place and well placed, and that could be a gain for Labour, and a significant gain, and a very good gain for Labour if Rob O'Donoghue gets home in Dublin Fingal West, and Duncan Smith looking good for Dublin Fingal East as well. So a bright spot for the Labour Party.
And you were talking about bellwethers, please. And I mean, I think the one to watch there is Lorraine Clifford Lee from Fianna Fáil. I mean, there would have been a seat that, having split from Darragh O'Brien in Fingal West, there would have been looked. She's at the moment with kind of 3/4 of the tallies in. She's running at 13.6%, so she's in 4th place. And so she's just behind the Fine Gaelers, so that'll be one to watch. If they there's one government seat there, and it's between Boland and it's between Lorraine Clifford Lee.
Yeah, and then if we switch back to Roscommon Galway, where they haven't had a government seat for a while, I would say now, based on those numbers, that Dr. Martin Daly, Fianna Fáil candidate, will get elected on the transfers from Eugene Murphy. Of course, Eugene Murphy left Fianna Fáil after not being added to the ticket. He felt that, given that Dr. Daly was based in the Galway part of the constituency, they should have had a Roscommon candidate. They didn't go for it. He went independent, but I would expect that vote to be going back into him. I mean, the Fine Gael second candidate, Dimfina, she's in Boyle, formerly the hometown of Frankie Feehan, who's of course over in Sligo. She did a very poor local election. I can't see her generating much more than her 5% at the moment to give that boost that Ashleen Dolan is going to need. Ashleen Dolan also in the Galway side of the constituency as well, so it doesn't favour her to pick up more votes across the county.
Fine Gael, of course, had hoped that John Naughton would be their candidate there, the late brother of Dennis Naughton, but he died tragically just before the campaign began, and that has obviously left the party in a very difficult position in that constituency. So, as Craig says, looks like it's going to be Fianna Fáil and not Fine Gael taking the seat there.
Yeah, and Dr. Martinelli, very strong name recognition. He was always the doctor for Roscommon football team as well.
And given the trouble that Stephen Donnelly, the outgoing health minister, seems to be in Wicklow, Dr. Martin Daly might be well placed potentially to become the health minister.
Former head of the IMO. Yeah.
There you go.
Let's head to Waterford. 4 sitting TDs being David Cullinan from Sinn Féin, Mary Butler, Fianna Fáil, Matt Shanahan, Independent, and Mark Akosik from the Green Party. With us is Aoife Kearns.
Hi Anton, how are you? I'm at the SETU Sports Hall in Waterford, and Waterford is the constituency where Sinn Féin is hoping to bag 2 seats. As you mentioned there, David Cullinan, the Sinn Féin health spokesperson, and his running mate, he's West Waterford councillor Conor McGuinness. And Fine Gael, no seat following the 2020 election, and they are fighting to get that back. We don't know if Sinn Féin will bag that second seat yet. But we do have a picture of Tramore, Waterford City West local electoral area where 85% of the boxes have been open, and it's a lead for Sinn Féin there, 34%. Fianna Fáil is on 12, over 12.5%. Fine Gael over 18%. And then we have the Green Party on 4.5%. Labour just under 3%, Independents on 15%, and then aim to 3.6% of the vote. Just to note there, you mentioned Mark Akosik, current Green Party TD in the Waterford constituency. Not looking good for him, as Tramore, Waterford City West is his own local area. So just a picture with 85 almost percent of the boxes open there. Green Party on 5%.
Aoife, thank you very much. That's Aoife Kearns in Waterford. Remind me, Sean, was Waterford one of those constituencies where Sinn Féin had 46 quotas and didn't run candidates?
Yes, yeah, where David Cullinan got an absolute whack of a vote last time in 2020 and couldn't get it in. And it was one of the few constituencies in the local elections where Sinn Féin actually gained seats in the councils on what was an otherwise wipeout day. So a second seat very much in the frame there. Conor McGuinness, who's the geography couldn't be more perfect in Waterford. You have Cullinan in the city and then McGuinness sort of out on his own in Dungarvan, no one really near him. He's on 7.8% on the tallies so far, and really in a battle with Matt Shanahan, the Independent, to take that 4th seat. So if Sinn Féin, I think one of the interesting things about the poll last night was that Sinn Féin were very close to Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil when it comes to the second preferences that people were giving overall. So I think they had 17% versus 20% for the bigger parties, which shows maybe people are seeing Sinn Féin as more of a normal party and a party they are more willing to transfer to than in previous elections, and that's what could get some of these second candidates and extra candidates in.
Can we come back to that a bit, because we've been in the weeds a little. The overall bigger picture of where we now stand. You were making a point before we came on air, at that point about Sinn Féin and the nature of the vote and the nature of its transferability, that if you look at the 2024 election from what we've seen thus far, it may not be a Rubicon in popular support, but it's a Rubicon crossed in the nature of the party and its vote.
Well, we've seen in so many elections in Irish history that a party gets a big whack of a vote and then the next election it totally goes out and the tide recedes on them. You see it usually as a result of being in government, which Sinn Féin wasn't. Instead, they ballooned up to 36-37% and then receded because of mistakes of their own nature largely, and went all the way down to 12 in the local elections. But I think what you're seeing is a solidifying of Sinn Féin as sort of a normal big 3 party in this election, and how the transfers go to them if they can pick up transfers, because traditionally they were transfer toxic from a lot of other parties. Now you're hearing people, even in the Vox Pops from last night, saying, well, I gave my number 1 for her, I usually do, but for the first time I gave Sinn Féin a number 2 or a number 3. And if that bounces out, then they may actually get a seat bonus that they've never got before and be in the realms of consistently being a 3-party country rather than the 2.5 or even 2 that we've been historically.
And hand in hand, that number that Jack Horgan-Jones had in relation of roughly 30% of transfers from Fine Gael going to Fianna Fáil and roughly 30% of transfers from Fianna Fáil going to Fine Gael suggests that we are also crossing, we've been doing it for a while, but we're crossing that Rubicon into the end of the old Civil War division.
Yeah, completely. It probably was crossed by the fact that they have gone into a formal coalition with each other. And I think even people in Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil were surprised with the level that they transferred to each other in the local elections, because it wasn't something they'd asked for, it was something that just happened organically. You're going to see it to a greater level. That's why either of them could still be the larger party, because where say, Fianna Fáil would have gotten a seat bonus 40 years ago or 30 years ago by having 40% of the vote. You'll now see it between the two, where a Fine Gaeler elects a Fianna Fáil or vice versa, and those final 4th and 5th seats that are real battles will be decided by one electing the other.
Yeah, and I think the sentiment on the ground, Anton, coming from the parties is, they're getting a lot of feeling is, we don't love you, we don't think you've done a brilliant job, but we want to keep the Shinners and the opposition out, and basically we will transfer from Fine Gael to Fianna Fáil or vice versa.
Well, we have with us Martin Kenny, who's Sinn Féin TD for Sligo Leitrim. Martin, first of all, give us your take on the national picture for Sinn Féin, if you would.
Well, look, the national picture is that we're obviously have done pretty well considering everything. Coming into the election a number of weeks ago, people were writing us off, but we have had I suppose a bit of a bounce in the last number of days. Probably in the last week I could notice it even on the street, meeting people on the doorstep and all of that. We could notice it was lifting and it was coming toward us. So I think we're going to probably end up somewhere in the low 40s in seats by the way it's looking. It could be a little higher than that even, because a lot of these seats are going to be down to the last seat in each constituency and where that end up. On this occasion we ran enough candidates, which hadn't happened 5 years ago, and it puts us in a position where we'll be playing to take additional seats certainly across the country. How that plays out in government formation and all of that is too early to say, but I think we're very satisfied. Certainly in my own constituency here in Sligo Leitrim we ran 2 candidates and we will be fighting to take a second seat.
Well, of course, you had a commanding first preference in the last general election, 15,024% the first preference vote. Do you expect that you will have enough to bring home a colleague?
It's possible. I'm just looking at the tallies. Their first tallies are in here at the moment. Marion Harkin, who is long-term, of course, independent candidate and sitting TD, her vote has really collapsed hugely. It's very surprising how Marion's vote has gone down so much. Fine Gael's vote has held up reasonably well, but again, we don't know what's going to happen with some of the other independents there, because we have an independent Ireland, Michael Clark, who is doing reasonably well at the moment. However, we're only looking at Sligo boxes. When he goes outside of Sligo, particularly his own home base of West Sligo, he's going to fall back as well. So I see the last seat is going to be between Edel McSharry, Michael Clark, and you also of course have Marion Harkin and Chris McManus there for the last seat. Chris has a slight advantage in that there's a number of left-wing candidates in Sligo town who are close to him. People Before Profit, Gino Boyle, and the Labour candidate Nessa Cosgrave, both of whom are going to get a decent enough vote. So he's in the mix there. If he gets a decent transfer from them, he could stay ahead and could pip the last seat.
Martin, thank you very much for your time. That's Martin Kenny there, Sinn Féin TD for Sligo Leitrim. Craig, you're just looking at the tally numbers from Sligo Leitrim as you're speaking. Anything jumping out?
No, I was actually looking at the tally for Wicklow.
Oh my God.
Because
close enough.
Because it is some astonishing numbers coming in here. Stephen Donnelly looks on course to lose his seat based on these numbers. Taoiseach Simon Harris on 28%. His running mate Edward Timmins 7%, but then you've got Jennifer Whitmore who's polling well on 13.9%, John Brady 14.3%, with Stephen Donnelly down there and just on 6.8% of the votes.
And Stephen Matthews, the Green Party TD and Housing Committee Chair, looks like he's gone.
And that's a constituency where Fianna Fáil have poured so much resources into this campaign.
Very, very notable. Micheál Martin, one of his last campaign stops in Greystones, trying to get the vote out for Stephen Donnelly. And it seems that Donnelly's focus on his ministerial job, and he would admit this himself, I think,
came at the cost
of the eye off constituency.
Fine Gael put a lot of effort into taking him out as well this election. They saw a second for Edward Timmins. Doesn't look like that's going to happen, but I know the Fianna Fáil team down there reckon between the run up to the election and the election that Fine Gael would outspend them 8-1.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the most. Sorry, go ahead, Danny. Briefly, if you
point very, very quickly. Even the numbers in Greystones, which is Donnelly's home patch, he's well behind, so he's in real trouble.
We'll talk about that a bit more after we take a break and get the news.
Listen in the car with Apple CarPlay or Android.
soft bow buns, or selection.
Brands like TaylorMade, Under Armour, Callaway and more. Visit us at Unit 16 Letterkenny Fort Retail Park, Newty Blaney Road, Letterkenny. McGurk's Golf. Best brands, best value.
Every Tuesday morning on Highland Radio, we'll be joining Freya and Colin for Claris the Car as we catch up with them for some Can Sugas crack on the way to school.
This Tuesday, they will be chatting about Sean and Regan, August by Jessica for couple of faculty usage freshen. So Biggie Lane, my Ginger March and shot our Highland Radio.
alex.station, Highland Radio.
Claire Sakar, Arna Winu, a commission na man, leis an Talia Cadanish Telefisha.
Good morning, it's Katie Gillen with the news at 11 o'clock. The counting of the votes in Donegal is now underway as it stands.
Starting left to right, Fianna Fáil 19.5%, Sinn Féin 21.1%, Fine Gael 21%. So we've seen over the past 4 days 3 opinion polls. The top 3 parties were all bunched together, and what do you know? There they are, stuck together. One of the big stories out of 2020 was that Sinn Féin was a coming force. It's confirmed its place, one of the top 3 parties. Continuing on, the Green Party on 4%, Labour on 5%, the Social Democrats on 5.8%. Once again, the opinion polls have put those 3 parties pretty close. Again, confirmation, it seems, from the exit poll that that's the case. Continuing on. People Before Profit Solidarity 3.1%, Aontú 3.6%, Independent Ireland, that's the new party, on 2.2%, Independents 12.7%, that's down from 15% in the general election last time, and others 1.9%.
Striking you immediately looking at that, given the nature of the campaign, Fianna Fáil will be disappointed to see themselves there, albeit there's a margin of error and it is a poll.
It is tight. Yes, they had expected that would be moving forward. It seems that they're a little bit behind there. The second thing which strikes me is because it's so close, this is too close to call exactly what's going to happen. Looking forward, it seems to me that if you're looking at Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, that joint vote together is substantial. And I think because we've got a slightly larger Dáil with 14 extra seats, with a majority of 87%, if you're just looking at that, it seems 2 things. One, that Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael will probably need 2 parties to form a coalition government, and it also still looks difficult to see how Sinn Féin could form a left-leaning government.
It's a margin of error of 1.4%, but if you're looking at that, it makes coalition formation simpler than one might have expected, does it?
Well, this is it. But what we'll all want to do is those ballot boxes open at 9 o'clock in the morning. We'll have sort of first counts by early afternoon, and that's really where you'll be able to make a decision. But just looking at there, that seems the way it's going. Yeah.
We only have at this point tallies, but they're very detailed tallies, and they're taking a break very shortly actually here in the counting process, because they've been going flat out and they're pretty much through Winnishowen at this point. And the story on the ground here that I'm hearing, the story amongst people is, and this is people of all political hues, is Fine Gael, and where are Fine Gael? What's happened to their vote? It's collapsed. Don't forget they're down to 3 councillors. And they're very likely to have any representation in the Dáil in this constituency for the first time in 100 years. Nicky Bradley polling 4%. There are some connections there that would sort of tally with how that might be the case there. Also, strong candidate getting a message out, by the way. I'm not being in any way disrespectful or dismissive. John McNulty just polling 1%. So Fine Gael in total in Inishowen 5%. I mean, that is. How do you rebuild back from that, Paddy Rooney? Three councillors and no TD, and I suppose a first preference on the ground.
Well, I suppose the biggest harm that you can do to any political party or team or club or whatever is morale. If you get a loss of morale within a team, it has a terrible effect on a team, and it takes a long time to get it out of your bones. I mean, it's one thing to run an election and to lose sort of respectively, it's not so bad. The machinery is probably still there, but if you get decimated like that, like what's happened in Inishowen, and if people take issue with me using the word decimated, I mean, I'm only talking back in 2011 again, when Joe McHugh and John Ryan went within an ace of taking 2 seats, and they're way back at that stage here, and morale is going to be the issue now. And it's not, I don't know how the Gurus, when they come down from Dublin to try and pick the embers out of the ashes here and trying to make something out of it, it'll be the morale of the foot soldiers on the ground is going to be an issue that's about, and
will it rest on Nicky Bradley's shoulders that she builds the party from her position in the Shannon? I don't know.
Could she? I don't know her, I've never met her, but she's new and brand new to the system, which is fine. Everybody's got to start at the beginning somewhere, but she hasn't been, I don't think, immersed in the machinations of Fine Gael in the constituency for a while. She could. Somebody's going to have to do it. Somebody's going to have to do it at local level and with support at national level. I mean, that's how these things work, like.
I think the only way that you're going to build up support is to get out on the ground and meet the people and try and rebuild a branch structure and an executive structure and get people motivated. Now, that has been Fine Gael's problem for a very long time. Maybe they don't have enough of a younger generation. I see that there's always issues of that kind of long established parties in rural Ireland.
I think the young Fine Gael too were quite detracting from Fine Gael in this county a few years ago, and I think that's passing through now.
It's a generational thing with Fine Gael. I mean, Fine Gael has always had difficulties. I mean, we talked earlier on about Paddy Hart's seat being lost to Father of the Dáil in 1997. Served this constituency with a powerful voice, especially with cross-border issues when it was a dangerous thing to be talking. But he done that. He lost the seat then. The seat was gone for 10 years. They missed their chance in 2002. Again, two-candidate strategy was totally wrong, and the Julie got a split vote and got 21%. It's much the same here today. I believe had they had one candidate only, I'm not going to say which of them, but they would have stood a much better chance, because if you're nailing your colours to the mast, you're going to look at one candidate, and you see one of them in Kilcara and the other out in Milford. It doesn't resonate, especially they took such a hammering at the local elections. That's going to take years to recover from. Very little has happened, I would imagine, in the intervening months since the local elections. Okay, there's the odd visit of the odd head honcho from headquarters coming up for a nice handy meeting and off back to Dublin again. But nothing was happening to build the structures of the organisation, and this is what's wrong here today. Sinn Féin is flying because they're so popular everywhere. It's not that long ago since there's only one T in the Dáil, or one TD in the Dáil. Fine Gael has allowed the momentum to slip and slip and slip, and all the while the executive became passive lookers on, and that is where the problem is, that you must keep building and keep building. Fianna Fáil is in a different position. They have 10 councillors. That is a big network across any constituency, and they're always on message.
I think Fianna Fáil are going to do really well nationally as well. I think. I mean, Micheál Martin's the most amongst those that were asked yesterday. He's the person that those who answered the question. He's the person they want to lead the country. They perhaps in
the choice was very limited though.
Well, but it is what it is. It's up to other parties to step up and.
You see another factor in the mix here too, and I suppose it's going to become prevalent in Donegal here, and that's the issue of identity. Anya Lawler asked Jack Chambers this morning, the finance spokesman for Fianna Fáil, I mean, what was the difference between Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael? If you vote for one, you're voting for the other. And I have to say he visibly struggled to articulate a difference between the two. Because if you want to look at, you see, people in Donegal, for instance, now, this is one of the strongest constituencies in the country for Sinn Féin, along with Cavan, Monaghan and Louth. And they've taken a sizable chunk of the vote here. I mean, it looks like that 4 out of every 10 voters, at least, in this constituency have given a number one vote to Sinn Féin. So Fine Gael then are being squeezed into a corner. They have all those difficulties that John was articulating there. But the problem, I suppose, now for the future, why would one vote for Fine Gael when you have Fianna Fáil, or why would you vote for Fianna Fáil when you have a Fine Gael? Because this, to all intents and purposes, I think, was the first general election that was run ever in the history in this state, and it was ideology free. If you walked into a room and there was 7 or 8 politicians who were having a debate about some particular issue, and you didn't know what party they were representing, you really wouldn't know the difference between Fine Gael and people for profit. And that's the problem now, that in days gone by, the Fine Gael party used to organise, had a space on the political stage.
But is that, Paddy, because people are just not connecting in the way that they used to? Like, I firmly believe that families now do this as a civic duty at the school gate, to meet in the local sports clubs 2 or 3 times a week with their children. And I think politics has moved away from the local dimension to the young families, and organisations are struggling. What do we do about this? People won't come to our meetings. It's not that the parties aren't holding a lots of meetings, town hall meetings, branch meetings, and all kinds of structures. It's just not working.
The other point I was going to make, you see, there's too much sameness in all this now, because we had a ballot paper there with 20 names on it, right? So there was some of the smaller independents were standing on niche issues or whatever, but you know, in days gone by, when we had a 2.5 party political landscape in this country, that's Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and Labour, it was very, very clear what you were going to get. In fact, you didn't even have to endure a political campaign, because if you knew what Fine Gael were about, they were aligned to some of the big, heavy parties in Europe, like the Christian democratic parties in places like Italy, Germany, France, and after 75 in Spain. And if you wanted Fianna Fáil, you knew what they were about, because they were sort of a centrist, catch-all party. You've used that term a lot in your newspaper, John. And if you went for the Labour Party, then you know it was social democracy tied with the Labour Party in England, high-end. We don't have that anymore. I mean, when you have Fine Gael now joining Sinn Féin and Fianna Fáil, they're going to offer 5,000 hospital beds by 21, 5,000 guards, that's that number again, 5,000 nurses and so on and so forth. I mean, that is most unlike Fine Gael to be doing that kind of stuff, because I would say the Fiscal Advisory Council must have been watching this dialogue through their fingers with the way things are being done. And of course, a lot of this stuff, by the way, completely unachievable. 5,000 beds between now and 2031. Whatever political party we're advocating that kind of number, that is equivalent to building 13 hospitals the size of Letterkenny University Hospital. The chance of achieving that in that time frame is nil. And I'll give you an example. When Micheál Martin was the Minister of Health, he came to Letterkenny University Hospital in 2003, and he gave approval for the new emergency department. It was September 2012 before we walked into that department. That was 9 years later.
Yeah.
Can't deliver all this stuff.
They can't. But you see, do people take? Look, all of this loud talk. Simon Harris in the first week of the election looked like he was handing away the family jewellery and silver and everything else on top of it. Every other day there was telephone numbers of
never
promises.
has so much been promised.
That was unbelievable.
And yet never has there been such lack of engagement. Catherine on Facebook says, imagine suggesting people should be made to vote. Unbelievable from a commentator. Well, I might be a commentator, but I'm also a normal person, and I do a lot of this, and I listen to an awful lot of people, and I know there's going to be an awful lot of frustration whichever way this pans out. I've always been opposed to making people vote, but at the end of the day, 1/3 of the population, as Paddy was number crunching, is effectively.
of course, there were those incidents which got a huge amount of coverage and publicity. But still, and Simon, put his hands up and said, I'm wrong on that. And I think a lot of people accepted that apology and said he apologised. So I do believe that if you look at what, obviously we were very high at some points, but if you look at the situation when Simon took over, if you look at the mountain he had to climb, if you look at the fact that you had 26 constituencies where you did not have an incumbent fighting for that seat. Now, it does look like we're going to have a number, I couldn't predict at this stage how many, but a number of new TDs, which will be very welcome. We went out with, let's say, 33, including Joe Kerry. So it does look like we're going to top the poll in several areas, and I do agree with what Daniel says, that where we have, that very good results, say Alan Dillon in Mayo, for example, James Gagan, there's quite a number who will probably head the poll, Simon himself, very high in Wicklow. Then I think you will see that transfer helping Fine Gael. The same with Fianna Fáil. But it is all to play for in terms of those final numbers. You couldn't predict it at this stage. In terms of the numbers, I think you could make a guess, but you really couldn't say what the final shape-up will, because the transfers and also the independent votes when they go out, where are they going to go? Are they going to go to Sinn Féin? I thought we might have 4 blocks of 20. That was my own feeling. But in fact,
and that was what the polls indicated for some time.
And the independents are 12.5, I think they're coming in.
Yeah, but then if you add Independent Ireland and you're up to about 60,
yes, of course.
70%,
Yes, yeah.
Now, Craig Hughes, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, I think, we look back at the analysis of this election and people will say that there was too much focus put on those events with Simon Harris and Canturk, and perhaps the John McGahan controversy as well. But I guess it was a feature of the campaign where there wasn't really much going on elsewhere. I mean, had any of the previous 4 Sinn Féin controversies broke during the election campaign, it could have been devastating for them. So, I mean, look, timing is everything here, and I'm sure that there are people in Simon Harris's camp who feel the media were too harsh on Fine Gael in the last few weeks, but the reality was it was the only story in town,
Exactly.
and they were pointing out that it was they were only minor issues, that they were getting too much traction. And I think it is clear from the results that we're seeing today that the public has seen them as only being minor issues, despite the amount of
and 2/3
just
satisfied.
briefly, folks, if you can, we're just going to head to Dublin Southwest, because at the Count Centre there we have Paul Murphy from People Before Profit. Paul, sorry to put you in the position of a reporter, but if you have a sense of the tallies, can you give us an idea of what's happening?
Sure. There's 1 seat for Fianna Fáil. That's likely to be John Lahart returned. There's 1 seat for Fine Gael. That's likely to be Colin Brophy returned. Sean Crowe will top the poll for Sinn Féin and be elected on the first count or very shortly thereafter. There's then 1 seat. The Greens will lose the seat of Francis Duffy, and there's a 3-way fight for that seat between Ciarán Ahern of the Labour Party, who has a slight edge, Rossa Milan of the Social Democrats, who is behind, and then Alan Edge, possibly, who's an independent previously connected to Catherine Zappone. And then the final seat will be between myself and the second Sinn Féin candidate. At the moment, and this is only with just over 50% of boxes tallied, it's looking reasonably good for us to be ahead and then to benefit from transfers from the second Sinn Féin, who's a councillor, Niamh Whelan in Tallaght.
Although presumably
Canada
it is likely
is
to
a
be
major
long
oil and
count
gas
before
producing
you'll have a
company.
sense of where you stand, all bottomed out.
It definitely will be, yeah. I think we'll be here, and we're out in the middle of nowhere in Western Airport, with no Wi-Fi and not many plugs. But yeah, I guess we'll be here till.
Sounds like a stress call put in there.
Give us a sense then, Paul, of your take on the national picture, because one of the things that we were talking about was whether or not the predicted rise of the independents had occurred. What's your view in terms of the existence of that rise of the independents? What's also your view of the cohesion of the left vote and the transfer friendliness of the parties on the left?
Yeah, I think in terms of the independent thing, I think that was something that happened in the course of the election campaign and then kind of waxed and then waned away. And we did get a sense of that. We would have previously felt that Paddy Houlihan, who's a councillor, an independent councillor, formerly of Sinn Féin in Tallaght, would have been in that fight for the last seat, but he has kind of underperformed our expectations anyway. And I think in general, people moved towards voting for change, like those that were minded to vote for change, which is a majority of the population, move towards voting for the parties, in particular, probably moved away from independents towards Sinn Féin. Obviously, we don't have the total figures yet, but I certainly had a sense that Sinn Féin would rise into the early 20s, but not quite get to the 2020 level. I do think, there's some attempts to portray this as a kind of vote for stability or whatever, but actually, if 2020 was a vote for change, which I think that's the broad perception, 2024 is even more a vote for lowest ever of feeling between them about.
Well, Paul predicted it correctly. The Wi-Fi has
Wi-Fi's
gradually given up. He got all that was available in your absence, Paul. Thank you very much for joining us. That was Paul Murphy, People Before Profit. And obviously, it'll take a while before we begin to get a sense of how second, third, fourth, fifth counts go in that constituency, but we will keep you updated. We're heading now over to Limerick and David Riley. What's the latest in Limerick, David?
Hi Anton. Well, in Limerick City at 9 a.m, the count centre was told that the city count would go ahead despite candidates not appearing in alphabetical order. Who knows, this may be challenged later yet. That has been the only drama here at the Limerick Racecourse, and it looks like little is changing in the political landscape in the city and the county. As it currently stands, 29 of 137 boxes have been tallied, and is showing in this four-seater that 3 outgoing TDs, Willie O'D, Fianna Fáil, a grandfather of the Dáil, Kieran O'Donnell, Fine Gael, and Maurice Quindelman, Sinn Féin, are the frontrunners. Willie O'D on 20% of the votes tallied, and unsurprisingly, he is threatening to top the poll. Kieran O'Donnell on 14% and Maurice Quindelman on 12%. The outgoing Green Party TD, Brian Ledden, is struggling on 5%. Those in the hunt for Ledden's seat, the final fourth seat, are Fine Gael's Maria Byrne, who is showing on 8% and with a lot of her own areas yet to be opened. And then there are 3 other candidates also in the shape-up for this fourth seat dogfight, which are on 7%, including Fianna Fáil's Dee Ryan, Labour's Conor Sheehan, and the Social Democrat candidate Eliza O'Donovan. The independent candidate Frankie Daly, who lost out narrowly on a seat last time, is trailing on 5%, but a number of his areas have also yet to be opened. In the county, upstairs, 25% of boxes have been opened, Anton, and it looks like, as it was in 2020, with 1 independent, 1 Fianna Fáil, 1 Fine Gael. The 3 outgoing TDs are running ahead of the rest. Richard O'Donoghue, Independent Ireland, the front-runner on 26%, followed by Niall Collins, Fianna Fáil, 24%, and Patrick O'Donovan, Fine Gael, 21%. But many surprised by first-time candidate for Sinn Féin, Joanne Collins, who is in 4th place in this 3-seater on 12%.
David, before we let you go, for those unfamiliar, you made reference to the decision about whether or not the count could go ahead because of the issues to do with the ballot paper. If people haven't heard about the issues to do with the ballot paper, maybe you might explain it.
Well, it emerged late yesterday evening that the ballot paper for Limerick City, the candidates appearing on that ballot paper were not appearing in alphabetical order, and under the legislation the candidates have to appear on the ballot paper in alphabetical order. There was then this hanging in the air as to whether a legal challenge might even be brought, whether the vote would be null and void, whether Friday's vote would be null and void, and whether we'd have to have a re-vote in Limerick City. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on who you are in this race in Limerick City, that has now been kiboshed, and the returning officer here indicated this morning at 9 a.m, just before the boxes opened, that they had considered the matter and they had decided that the counting would get underway.
Well, thank you very much, David. And I don't know if it was audible, but Francis Fitzgerald in the midst of that said extraordinary. We'll pick up after the break with why it is so extraordinary. I want to say a thank you to Danny McConnell, who is, of course, editor of the Business Post, and Craig Hughes, who is political editor with the Irish Daily Mail and Mail on Sunday. We'll be back with more coverage after this break.
Election 2024 on News.
Costing
what is happening. We've all the Inishowen boxes open, so we'll be able to bring you a final tally on that in the not too distant future. Letterkenny, quite a number of those boxes are open, and in the South Donegal area as well, we are seeing some boxes open. And Milford now, Milford also, some boxes beginning to be opened there. So as I say, we've lots to keep you updated on, but we are now going to go to that end to Donal Kavanagh. Donal, what is the lay of the land out there?
Been looking at some boxes now in South Donegal, and Michaela's going to have some more information about boxes in South Donegal as well. There was a little bit of speculation here for a while this morning that Noel Jordan might be in place to actually take a third seat. Now, for Sinn Féin, not sure at the moment. Jordan probably isn't doing as well as he'd like to be doing in places like Fintra outside Killybegs. Looking at Fintra, obviously Thomas Pringle is really doing really well in Fintra, but Pierce Doherty almost polling as well as Noel Jordan in that area. Jordan not really eating into Pringle's vote, and the fact that Doherty is doing so well really is a strong indication of where Doherty's position is. He's going to top the poll. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Most probably on the first count, the way things are looking for Pierce Doherty at the moment. From the point of view of Thomas Pringle, he did steadily in Inishowen. His people reckon his vote is up in Inishowen. They're very happy at his performance around Killybegs, Donegal Town, his own home patch. They'll be watching now to see how other constituencies are going, doing reasonably well in the Letterkenny boxes that are open as well. Fine Gael not doing as well as they would have hoped. Nicky Bradley polling reasonably well in Letterkenny, but perhaps not well enough to actually make up the ground that Fine Gael will be losing in the Inishowen area. John McNulty starting to show now as we open boxes in the Donegal Town area, and obviously when we move into Stranraer or Lifford, we'll see more and more steady showing from John McNulty there. Looking at just one box as a sample in Garva, which is around about the Lough Esk area outside Donegal Town. That topped by Noel Jordan, he's on 50. Thomas Pringle then on 42. Pat the Cope Gallagher on 36. Pierce Doherty on 24. Charlie McConaughey on 17. And John McNulty on 9. Now McNulty, I'm sure, would have been hoping to do better in boxes that close to Donegal Town. He's got a business presence in that area. He would be known in that area. He would have been hoping to do a little bit better than that, I think, in terms of his performance. But certainly, I mean, we're looking at Pierce Doherty being elected on the first count, the way things go at the moment, particularly when we start opening boxes from West Donegal. Will Padraig McLaughlin get enough to get in on the first count? Perhaps not. We may see Padraig McLaughlin, depending on Pierce Doherty's surplus, to get him through on the second or third counts. But that's a while yet before we can really start speculating properly on that. But certainly, the story is Pierce Doherty continues to poll really well. Thomas Pringle getting now nice and strong from his point of view in that area around South Donegal, his own base in Killybegs. Charlie McConaughey pulling 17 out of Garva. That's reasonably respectable for McConaughey. He'll be, I'm sure, happy with that. But as John said earlier in his commentary, McConaughey is going to need more in terms of assuring that he can get back a seat. He's certainly not out of the running as of yet. Charles Ward continuing to poll. He's still on the 13-14% there or thereabouts. He's still doing reasonably well. Is Ward getting enough seconds to really bring him where he needs to be? That's questionable at the moment, and there's a lot to be discovered and to be figured out in this count yet.
All right, brilliant stuff, Donal. Thank you very much indeed for that. You are tuned to Highland Radio's general election coverage. We are live here from the Aura Leisure Centre for the count. We're going to be taking a break shortly. John McAteer will be rejoining us in a while. You're all right, John. He's double jobbing here. Paddy Rooney also will be back with us. We're going to be joined by numerous other guests too over the course of the day. We are going to have Trudy, who was very popular with you amongst you, the listeners and viewers, during the local elections, and other guests as well besides, so stay tuned for that. So I'll give you a recap of where we're at for those of you that are just tuning in for the first time. Obviously at this time in the morning, a lot of conversation, a lot of speculation. We all love it, don't we? It is politics. This is our All Ireland, all right? It only happens once every 4 or 5 years. At the moment, we have a clear picture of what's happening in Inishowen. So a lot of our conversation so far this morning has been about Inishowen. Now, very shortly, we'll have all those tallies in from Inishowen. We're not going to keep going over them. We'll remind you of them. And our attention will move to Letterkenny, because quite a lot of Letterkenny boxes are being opened now. All of the Inishowen boxes are open. They've started in South Donegal. some of the boxes in the Killybegs, Donegal town area. Milford now is starting to be opened, and we also have the Stranorla boxes as well for all of you listening and watching in East Donegal. We have not forgotten you, but we are dictated to by which boxes are being opened and when. Now the staff here are flying. I don't know, mid-afternoon, early afternoon, maybe we might get a first count. Who's to say? It'll be an early bath for Pádraig McLaughlin, not Pádraig McLaughlin, but for Pierce Doherty, it would seem. But anyway, John McAteer might correct me on that. He knows better about when we might get a first count. But I just want to run through for you how the main contenders in the Inishowen area are doing, because we've 211 boxes opened there right now, so it's a really, really, really big sample. And I can tell you that I'll just do it in terms of percentages, right? Because numbers, especially if you're listening, numbers can kind of blend into one, so I'm just going to do percentages if that's okay. So in terms of, I'll go left to right. In terms of Nikki Bradley, she is sitting at 4% support in Inishowen. She totaled 712 votes there. Vincent Bradley, 0.1%. He managed to pull 21 votes out of Inishowen. Nuala Carr of the Greens at 1%. She got 181 votes there. Pierce Doherty in Inishowen, 16.2%. We'll go on to I'll fast forward here to those that are in percentages above 1. Pádraig McLaughlin, it's his backyard, isn't it? 32.8%. He's just slipped under 1 in 3 people in Inishowen voting for him. Who else do we have here? Charlie McConnell, 20.2%. 1 in 5 people in Inishowen voting for Charlie McConnell. I'll go back to Carol Gallagher, People Before Profit, 0.9%. She's almost got 1%. In fact, she's just moved to 1% of the vote in Inishowen. Pat the Cope Gallagher. He is of Fianna Fáil, not polling very high in Inishowen at all, 1%, but he perhaps wasn't expecting much greater than that. Noel Jordan, also a long way from Inishowen, down in South Donegal, 0.7% of the vote there. Claudia Kennedy, who I haven't mentioned yet, 43 votes in Inishowen with 0.2% of the vote. I'll go on to Niall McConnell, an independent, of course, 256 votes in Inishowen, 1.4% of the vote there, so he is ahead of a lot of candidates in the race. Eamon McGee of the Irish Freedom Party, his message resonated with 76 people in Inishowen. He's got 0.4% of the vote. Arthur McGuinness has collected 28 votes so far. Jerry McKeever is an independent. He has 10 votes out of Inishowen, 0.1%. A lot of these candidates will be expecting to do better when they get sort of into their own patches, so to speak. Kim McMenamum, he is at 2% in the tallies, 367 votes he's polled in this general election. John McNulty of Fine Gael, 191 votes in Inishowen. He's sitting there at 1%. We then have Frank O'Donnell, who is an independent. He's got 22 votes in the Inishowen area, 0.1% there. Thomas Pringle, an independent, 2.4%. We heard he's happy with that. Is that an increase in vote? I don't have that right in front of me. Mary T. Sweeney of Aintu, and we'll speak to a lot of these people as they arrive, by the way, here over the course of the day. We've got loads of time to fill. You won't miss a thing. 2.2% there. And then Charles Ward, 12.8% he's running in Inishowen. And it depends on who you chat to, from whichever background or party they are from. They're all reading those results somewhat differently. Let me see now some of the comments here. I just want to make sure I pick it up right here. No one came to my door. There's people living in the countryside as well as the towns. I hope politicians know that. Listening to you talk about people voting for the 3 main parties, what do you expect when you turn on RTE News every evening and you see 3 correspondents following the main party leaders every night? Why? Yeah, I suppose that's an interesting point. Hi, Gary and Siobhan Dwyer, listening in Sligo. Hi, Gary. Hi, Siobhan. Lovely to have you on board. Please say hello to us. Tell us where you're watching or listening from. One of the reasons the 100% Redress Party isn't polling well in Inishowen is that you had Paddy Differ on social media every single day telling people to vote Sinn Féin. He's a voice for defective concrete and people listen to him. I'm just sorry that he didn't shout out Charles Ward too. As for Fine Gael showing, the people of Donegal saw how Fine Gael treated their highly respected TD Joe McHugh. when he stood up for the defective homeowners, unlike other spineless elected county representatives, they say. Pat the Cope Gallagher only run to put Charlie McConnell out. The party didn't pull together in Donegal, or for Donegal at least Sinn Féin worked together. You hear different things about different campaigns, don't you? I did hear something along those lines that it wasn't exactly all roses and light in the Fianna Fáil camp. They give you a $50 fine if you don't show up to vote in Australia without a good excuse. I don't know. Is that encouraging people or is that dictating? Hi all, I just want to say if Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael back into government again, there's no future here. They've Ireland in a total mess. If they get back in, myself and my wife and kids will have no choice but to move to Australia, as we can't see a future in Ireland. Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael gangster, well, I can't read that bit, but anyway, they're not happy with the truths that they say. I'm fully supportive of the DCB redress, but from what I'm seeing, there is a lot of waste from houses that are being demolished. You just need to look at the Facebook page with people selling all belonging to them to replace it with brand new furniture, appliances, etc. for the new homes. Many people who are in the middle of it don't come across as impoverished. Photos of them away on holidays, etc. Look, you don't have to be poor to get justice. You don't have to have nothing to your name to have your house restored for you. This is not about rich people getting houses rebuilt for them. It doesn't matter what your financial status is. If your house is falling down around your ears through no fault of your own, whether you're a prince or a pauper, you are entitled to the same level of redress, aren't you? And also, in fairness, you know, are you going to put back in an old fireplace? Are you going to try and put back in an old kitchen when it falls to bits? Do I need to shut up, Caroline? You look like you're pausing there. I'm okay. Can I keep going? I can't get my head around Pat the Cope. He is anti-abortion, but he's a member of a party who supports abortion. How does this work? Because you can be... all the parties say, look at, you know, people are entitled to their own opinions within the structure of the party. Watching YouTube election coverage from Letterkenny, quite shocked how the Inishowen people haven't backed the Micah candidate. The 100% Micah redress party will now fall apart. Plaudits to John, Greg, Donald and the team on the great coverage so far. Really appreciate your feedback. Charles Ward, by far the wrong candidate for this election. They should have ran Ali. Ali didn't want to run. And they have another councillor as well that didn't want to run, in Joy Bird. She did not want to run, so what can you do? Last one for now. I think Fine Gael should have ran Councillor Jimmy Cavan. A big mistake running two unknown candidates, but obsessed with having female representation. They never listened to people on the ground, which is an interesting point. Okay, it is time for a break. Don't go very far because the counters are back after a short break, and we're going to be getting more details from different parts of the county in the not too distant future. Rejoin us, as I say, in a couple of moments.
Today's election coverage is brought to you in association with DMG Motors, the home of Cupra. Introducing the Cupra Terramar, a sporty SUV available in PHEV, petrol and mild hybrid, and the all-new Cupra Tavascan, our first 100% electric SUV coupe. DMG Cupra, Clara Road, Donegal Town. Telephone 07497213996 or log on to dmgmotors.ie for more details.
Get ready for Downing's GAA helicopter ball drop this Saturday the 30th of November at 2 p.m. We're dropping 5 footballs from a helicopter, and if one lands in your square on the pitch, you could win a massive...
The performance of Jerry the Monk Hutch in Dublin Central, and the early boxes were from the Garda constituencies that would have been his area, and we had yet to see, I think, Fisborough and Drumcondra. We have 100% of the boxes open now in Dublin Central, and what we have is Mary Lou MacDonald on 19.4%. Then we have Gary Gannon, Social Democrats, on 13.2%. Pascal Donoghue obviously ahead of Gary Gannon on 16.6%. And then, as far as I can see, if I have, yes, Jerry Hutch next on 9.3%. Does that mean Jerry Hutch is going to get across the line?
Yeah, I think it does. But there is one overriding trend that is coming through nationally, that while it still looks like the government will be FFFG and struggling to put the numbers together, but somewhere in the high 70s perhaps together, and that is speculative, but Sinn Féin will be the largest party. Not only have they succeeded in getting enough votes for 2 seats in the likes of Dublin South Central, and other areas, but they've also spread the vote. So you'd expect O'Snuddy to be miles away, but miles ahead. But O'Dahy is Doolan has got the same vote. So an extraordinary performance in Dublin Northwest, where it now looks like there would be 2 out of 3 Sinn Féin there. So that's Catherine. Carney Bode is going to get in with Desi Ellis, and really it's between Paul McAuliffe and the Soc Dems for the last seat there, which is Roisin Shortles also all the bellwethers. For example, Fintan O'Sullivan in the Wicklow-Wexford constituency struggled to get the last seat in the council for Gorey, and he's going to sail into the Dáil. And it looks like all 3 TDs are going to be from Wexford. The whole idea was to get us. Arcla's never had a TD. It looks like that will continue. It'll be Byrne for Fianna Fáil, Brennan for Fine Gael, and Fintan O'Sullivan. So similarly, Johnny Mythen has held up very well in Wexford. I think Wexford is now quite clear-cut.